Namaskar and welcome to Midday Prime. Updates from India and the world on the war against COVID, happenings from the world of business and sports, besides other news. But first, the big news at this hour. Financial benefit to farmers under PM Kisan scheme. The PM to release 19,000 crore rupees to 9.5 crore farmers through DBT. The scheme tomorrow. The DCGI approves Phase 2 and Phase 3 clinical trial of Covaxin in the age group of 2 to 18 years. Bharat Biotech to conduct trials in 525 healthy volunteers. National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization recommends for increasing jabs between 2 doses of COVISHIELD to 12 to 16 weeks. E-Sajeevani extends service to over 50 lakh patients. 1,500 doctors serve patients remotely through the National Telemedicine Service. Few states work towards rolling out special home isolation OPDs. India's cumulative vaccination coverage exceeds 17.72 crore doses. Over 34 lakh beneficiaries in the age group of 18 to 44 vaccinated so far. More than 18.94 lakh vaccine doses administered till now. International aid continues to pour into India. Indonesia sends 200 oxygen concentrators. Germany, Greece and Finland extend medical aid to India. 1,200 oxygen cylinders arrive from the UK. Tension escalates in Israel-Gaza violence. At least 65 killed in Gaza, 7 in Israel as clashes intensify. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows to end clash between Arabs and Jews. The US President Joe Biden shows solidarity with Israel, tells Netanyahu Israel has a right to defend itself. The US releases International Religious Freedom Report for 2020 and says that China criminalizes religious expression and continues to commit crimes against humanity and genocide against Uyghur Muslims and other religious and ethnic minorities. So let's begin with the big story. The big story is this: Prime Minister Narendra Modi will release the 8th installment of the financial benefit under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi scheme tomorrow at 11 a.m. This will be via a video conference. The Union Minister Narendra Singh Tomar tweeted and said that over 19,000 crore rupees will be transferred to over 9.5 crore beneficiary farmer families. Under the Prime Minister Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, the government transfers 6,000 rupees a year to small and marginal farmers into their accounts. The financial assistance from the government to the farmers comes in 3 installments of 2,000 rupees each. All small and marginal farmers are eligible for a minimum income subsidy of 6,000 rupees per year under this scheme. And moving on to the other big story of the day, well, Bharat Biotech has been granted permission to conduct Phase 2 and Phase 3 trials. This is for COVID vaccine Covaxin, and this is for the age group of 2 years to 18 years. So the expert panel of the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization has recommended the conduct of these trials. The Drugs Controller General of India has accepted the recommendation of the Subject Expert Committee, that's the SEC. The trial will be conducted on 525 healthy volunteers. And earlier, the Subject Expert Committee of the Central Drugs Standard Control Organization deliberated upon Bharat Biotech application seeking permission to conduct Phase 2 and Phase 3 trials to evaluate the safety and immunogenicity of Covaxin in children aged between 2 and 18 years. Covaxin has been developed by Bharat Biotech in collaboration with the Indian Council of Medical Research. And this vaccine is currently being used nationwide in the vaccination drive. And this is for the vaccination of people above 18 years of age. The National Technical Advisory Group on Immunization has recommended increasing the gap between 2 doses of COVISHIELD to 12 to 16 weeks. Currently, the interval between the 2 doses of COVISHIELD is 4 to 8 weeks. Earlier in March, the Centre had written to the states and union territories to increase the gap between the 2 doses of COVISHIELD from 4 to 6 weeks to 4 to 8 weeks. Now, the recommendations of the NTAGI, this will be sent to the National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID-19, and no change in dosage. The interval for Covaxin, that is, has been suggested by the panel. The Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has released the data of the number of consultations given under the flagship national telemedicine service ESANJEEVANI in 1 year since its launch in April of 2020. So the telemedicine service has so far served over 50 lakh people in 31 states and union territories of the country. And according to the ministry, the telemedicine service has served over 50 lakh people so far. Tamil Nadu is the first state to record over 10 lakh consultations on E-Sajeevani. The number of consultations in Tamil Nadu stands at 10,44,446. That's followed by Karnataka with 9,36,658 consultations so far. Uttar Pradesh has recorded about 8,42,643. Andhra Pradesh has recorded 8,35,432 consultations so far. Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat have reported over 2 lakh consultations each. And Bihar, Kerala, Maharashtra and Uttarakhand have reported over 1 lakh consultations each. The ESANJEEVANI initiative is operational in 31 states and union territories of the country, and daily in fact, and around 40,000 patients across the country daily are using this contactless and risk-free modality of healthcare services delivery. There are 2 modules, in fact, of ESANJEEVANI. ESANJEEVANI ABHWC, the doctor-to-doctor telemedicine platform, has been implemented in over 18,000 health and wellness centers. And by December 2022, telemedicine would be operational at 1,55,000 health and wellness centers. And in all, over 21,000 users, including specialists, doctors, and community health officers, have been trained for this platform. The other module we are talking about is the ESANJEEVANI OPD. Now, this has been rolled out in 28 states and union territories. Over 350 OPDs have been set up on ESANJEEVANI OPD, and over 300 of these are specialty OPDs. So over 30 lakh patients have been served through ESANJEEVANI OPD, which is free of cost. So let's move on to our developing story now. The Union Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, is holding a review meeting with the health ministers of Delhi, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and this meeting will cover issues of COVID-19 management and also acceleration of the vaccination drive. Earlier, the Health Minister, Dr. Harshvardhan, held a meeting with the health ministers of 8 states to discuss the rise in corona infection and steps being taken to control the surge. COVID management and vaccination were also discussed. Well, the cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has exceeded 17.72 crore today under phase 3 of the vaccination drive. A total of 17 crore, 72 lakh, 14,256 vaccine doses have been administered through 25 lakh, 70,537 sessions as per the provision reports till 7 o'clock this morning. 4,31,285 beneficiaries in the age group of 18 to 44 years received their first dose of COVID vaccine in the last 24 hours. And cumulatively now 34,80,618 across 30 states and union territories since the start of phase 3 of the vaccination drive. So nearly 19 lakh vaccination doses were administered in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, India's total active caseload has increased to 37 lakh 10,525 today. It now comprises 15.65% of the country's total positive cases. 3,62,722 new cases were registered in the last 24 hours. 10 states reported 72.42% of the new cases in the last 24 hours. Maharashtra has reported the highest daily new cases, followed by Kerala and Karnataka. And the mortality rate across the country currently stands at 1.09%. India continues to put up a strong fight against COVID-19, and the country continues mass-scale COVID-19 testing. As per the ICMR, 18,64,594 samples were tested on May 12, taking the cumulative total to 30 crore 94 lakh 48,585. And let's go across to Tapas Bhattacharya now, who has more details on this. Tapas, good to be chatting to you once again. So we've talked a little bit about the vaccines. That's crucial. And, you know, the important thing is the decision for clinical trials for Covaxin for children from 2 to 18, as well as the extension now for the period of time between the first dose and the second dose of COVISHIELD to 8 to 12 weeks. So give us an idea as to why, give us the reasoning behind this.
Right. So in fact, in a few days back, the Lancet, the journal in UK, has actually published report that once you increase the duration of the dosage of the first and the second one, the impact or the whole efficacy of COVISHIELD increases. Remember, COVISHIELD is basically the AstraZeneca and Oxford, they have actually got this particular vaccine and been manufactured in the country by Serum by the name of COVISHIELD. So it was proven by a report that if one increases the number of days, the duration of the first and the second dose, the impact and efficacy increases considerably, and that's what the reason why, based on certain reports on that, and also the test reports done in the UK as well as in India, it was found that it is best to increase the number of increase the gap, number of gap between the two dosage that is there. So that is one point. And the second one, we spoke about the fact that Covaxin got the approval. It's a huge achievement, because once the people are talking about, the experts are talking about the fact that the third wave, once it gets going, it has the possibility of impacting the youngsters, and keeping that in mind, Covaxin's impact, Covaxin's study on the phase 2 and phase 3 trials, especially on 2 to 18-year-old, will be a huge achievement if they can come out with that. They also have to showcase they have to give the study details to the ICMR and the government and the drug controller general, and they have to come out. They have to give the phase 2, phase 3's interim report also. But given the fact that one has to plan ahead, it is a big step by Covaxin and big step by the Drug Control General of India to provide to start this particular testing for this particular population that we are talking about, if one has to prepare for the third wave of the virus. So that is another part. The third part that you spoke about earlier, that Union Health Minister is having a meeting with almost six states health
Yes.
ministers. Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, and Delhi. All these states, and earlier yesterday also they had meetings with 7 states. The important part that the health minister and the union government is talking about is the fact that most of the states are not keeping 70% vaccination for the second dose. That's what the union health minister as well as the union government is emphasizing, the fact that one has to have 70% of the dosage for the second dosage. You have to allocate 70% of that, and also keeping in mind the COVID behavior, COVID protocol, as well as increasing the number COVID situation, what is the progress in that stage, be it availability of oxygen, be it availability of more beds, isolation centers, all these buts earlier discussed yesterday and also today. Meeting is currently going on. We were told that in fact Delhi has in fact been told that they have revised their oxygen allocation. Earlier, they have given to the sector almost 900, at one point of time, 900 metric tons of oxygen requirement from 700. Now they have reduced it to just over 550, 570 metric tons. So
yes,
all these things are being discussed. So we have to understand which state, while some states having difficulty in getting remdesivir medicine and other crucial medicine. So this particular meeting will go a long way in assessing the needs of certain states and also getting a clear picture about the vaccination.
Yes, Tapas. So you've given a very comprehensive answer there, Tapas, but I want to emphasize the other point on the COVISHIELD, the extension of the duration between the first and the second phase, second dose of the vaccine. Also, the fact that when you do that, also the vaccine becomes more efficient, the efficacy of the vaccine over a longer period of time. Because the duration, if you do take the vaccine earlier also, then, the period of time is lessened for its efficacy. But when you take it after a longer period of time, then, it extends the duration of your immunity, I believe. That's also one of the arguments that can be put forward. But thanks very much for joining us, and let's move across then to our next story. Now, the union government is continuously engaged in the allocation and supply of medical equipment and medicines to the states and union territories received from the various countries. The Health and Family Welfare Ministry has said that a total of 9,284 oxygen concentrators, over 7,000 oxygen cylinders, 19 oxygen generation plants, 5,933 ventilators and BiPAP machines, and more than 3,44,000 remdesivir vials have been dispatched to the states and union territories so far. The Health Ministry said that global aid has been delivered to the states and union territories to strengthen and supplement their COVID response. The central government is ensuring a streamlined and fast delivery of the global aid through faster customs clearances. So the Indian Railways has delivered tons of liquid medical oxygen to various states across the country, and the first oxygen express to Chennai was on its way from Durgapur, carrying oxygen in its containers, and this will ensure uninterrupted supply of oxygen for COVID-19 patients in Tamil Nadu. Oxygen Express continues to offload significant amounts of LMO in the NCR. The Oxygen Express carrying 105.81 metric tons of LMO from Angul in 6 tankers arrived in Faridabad this morning. 3,817 metric tons of oxygen relief has been delivered through 207 loaded tankers in Delhi, Faridabad and Gurgaon so far. Meanwhile, international aid continues to pour in. A consignment of 200 oxygen concentrators from Indonesia reached the Delhi airport in the early hours of the morning. Also, aircraft carrying 176 ventilators from Germany, 324 oxygen cylinders from Finland, 10 oxygen cylinders from Greece. They landed in Delhi at the airport. Also, the Customs Department has been ensuring speedy clearance of all these consignments for intended beneficiaries. Another 1,200 oxygen cylinders from the from the British Oxygen Company arrived from the UK in the morning. The External Affairs Ministry spokesperson tweeted about it, appreciating the logistical support from Qatar Airways for this shipment. And Abhishek Jha now puts this into perspective for us. Abhishek, aid pouring in from different parts of the world continuously, to help us in this time when the second wave continues to surge, but it's coming down, of course, with the help of all this aid, one would say. Just put it into context for us how this aid is being distributed and how it's being targeted, in which areas, how the government machinery is operating to finally get the aid that comes in through the airports to the final destinations.
Of all the ministries, especially Health Ministry, Foreign Affairs Ministry, members from NTAGI and all from members from Finance Ministry, all are there, and they before we prepare for the consignment that are going to be landing in countries somewhere in Delhi or in Chennai or in some area. And accordingly, a plan is laid that when the consignment is reaching to the destination, how the required custom clearance can be given quickly, how soon will these consignments of resources and equipment can be deployed to a particular location where it is definitely, because we are seeing recently like those equipment reaching to Delhi are also being sent to Bhopal, Patna, in some cities of UP or down south.
Abhishek, I can't hear you. Perhaps your microphone suddenly went on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So all the well-coordinated effort that has been in the past is now have now actually started giving the result when people.
I think there seems to be some sort of problem, Abhishek, but thanks very much for those inputs. Abhishek, putting into context the global aid that is coming in from all across the world. Now, moving on then, the government has said that Made in India ventilators have strengthened infrastructure of hospitals for efficient COVID management. The Health Ministry said that the centre has been supporting the efforts of the states and union territories for effective management of COVID patients in hospital care under the whole of government approach. And this has been happening since last year. So the ministry says that there have been some media reports which suggest that the government of India supplied ventilators to GGS Medical Hospital, Faridkot, Punjab, and are lying unused as a result of technical glitches which have not been resolved due to poor after-sales support by the manufacturers. So it says that these reports seem to be unfounded. They are not with the full information on the matter. And with reference to the recent media report regarding 71 of 80 AGVA made ventilators being non-functional or faulty at the GGS Medical Hospital, the ministry has clarified that 88 ventilators have been supplied by Bharat Electronics Limited and 5 by AGVA. And after successful installation and commissioning, these ventilators were provided with final acceptance certificate by the hospital authorities. BEL has informed that the bulk of the ventilators at GGS Medical College and Hospital, they are not faulty, as they are being reported in the section of the media. They are not faulty is what the government says. The Union Health Secretary had written to 7 such states that they had on the 11th of last month, in fact, which still have more than 50 ventilators lying uninstalled with them for the last 4 to 5 months. And they have been requested to get the installation expedited so that these ventilators can be put to optimal use. Now, the ministry has said that BEL will continue to provide all the technical support required by the state in meeting the ventilator requirements during this pandemic situation. Let's move on to our National Prime segment now. In order to control the spread of coronavirus in Maharashtra, the government there has been under the Break the Chain initiative and has extended the ongoing restrictions till the 1st of June 2021. Earlier, these restrictions were supposed to end on the 15th of May, but under the new orders, all government offices except emergency services related to the coronavirus pandemic will open with only 15% attendance. Wedding ceremonies, only 25 people will be allowed to attend, and they should be completed within 2 hours. According to the new order, anyone entering the state will have to carry a negative RT-PCR report. This rule was earlier applicable only to travelers coming from the states marked as sensitive. But now the rule has been extended to people coming in from states of any state of the country, in fact, from any part of the country. And all the restrictions that have been made applicable to people arriving from places of sensitive origins, as per the orders dated 18th April and May 1, 2021, will be applicable to anyone arriving from any part of the country. Milk collection, transport, and processing may be allowed with restrictions. These are the new orders in place in Maharashtra. Shishir Shella now joins us with more inputs on this. Well, Shishir, the numbers were coming down in Maharashtra. Perhaps that people were expecting an ease in these restrictions, but they are becoming stricter. Can you put that into context for us?
Well, absolutely, Mark. The Maharashtra government today have passed an order stating that now the strict restrictions will continue till 1st of June here. Well, obviously, yesterday there was a meeting in Maharashtra, the cabinet meeting, and most of the ministers are of the view that these numbers which are reducing currently is because of the strict restriction imposed by the government. Okay. And if government continue with this, then probably we may see a further decline in the positivity percentage that Maharashtra is witnessing at this point in time. And that's the reason state government have come out with the stricter restrictions till 1st of June here. Though some of the essential services have been given free hand, they can work as the way they want, because that's what quite important here. But apart from that, the government office has been allowed to work with 15% of the total workload here. The private offices have been told to shift to a work from home mode, as it was told earlier. So that the current lockdown was supposed to end on 15th of May. But now, looking at these numbers, the state government have taken decision to extend it for another 15 days here. If you look at especially the numbers, in terms of number, in the first week of the May, the Maharashtra registered almost 60,000 plus cases every day. But if you look at the yesterday's number, yesterday nearly 48,000 cases was registered. Now, another positive aspect here is that the people who have been recovered so far has increased here, and that's the reason the recovery rate of the state has gone to almost 88%. Now, this recovery rate is quite higher compared to any other state in the country at this point in time. Yes. And that's the reason the state government is focusing quietly to reduce this number further. Even though the 48,000 numbers that Maharashtra has registered yesterday is quite higher than what the Maharashtra has registered during the first wave. Okay. And that's the reason state at this point in time taking a stricter action and try to impose these restrictions at every part in the states here. Because there are some of the cities in different parts of the state and some of the districts also witnessing a higher number. And that's the reason Maharashtra government want to reduce those number. The local administration at various locations in the states have already said that the strict lockdown may be imposed in some of the cities in the Maharashtra, so that the number may reduce. Now, during these 15 days, the Maharashtra government is focusing on to increase the infrastructure facility here. First of all, they want to focus on the vaccination drive, because Maharashtra so far has received maximum vaccines, and state has administered almost 1 crore 91 lakh vaccines so far across the state here. And going forward also, the state government is even yesterday the Maharashtra Health Minister have said that they are going to issue a global tender. Especially the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai have already issued the global tender. On 18th of this, the tender will be closed, and probably the state will give the order for the vaccination here. Nearly 1 crore of doses that the BMC have said that they will ask from the manufacturers here. That's why they have actually floated the tender here. So obviously, on one hand, the state government want to reduce the number. On the other hand, they are actually trying to increase the health infrastructure, and also giving vaccine to the people, so that probably by end of the June, probably we may see that a much big decline, especially in the positive cases in Maharashtra.
Thanks very much, Shishir, for those inputs. So Maharashtra definitely consolidating on the gains that it has made with stricter lockdowns. Now moving on then, in Assam, new guidelines in urban and peri-urban areas have come into force this morning. The Assam government decided to close all offices and education institutions for 15 days from today. The Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma yesterday directed the Health Department to conduct 1 lakh COVID tests daily. All shops and commercial establishments are closed at 1 p.m. daily. The weekly haats, that's the bazaars, they are not allowed to function for 15 days. However, pharmacies, hospitals, animal care centers, veterinary clinics have been allowed to operate. Marriages and religious functions are allowed with the presence of a maximum of 10 people. All public transport vehicles are operating only up to 30% of their seating capacity. All educational institutions, government and non-government offices are also closed for 15 days. Only online classes are permitted for students. That's the situation in Assam. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha announced a slew of measures for families who have lost their loved ones due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Lieutenant Governor said that senior citizens who have lost only earning members of the family will be provided a special pension for life, while children who have lost their parents will be provided with special scholarships by the government. And he said that the government will reach out to each and every such family and will be provided financial assistance for self-employment by the Jammu and Kashmir Bank. The government has also decided to provide 1,000 rupees per month to all registered construction workers, poniwalas, palkiwalas, pithuwalas. This is for the next 2 months. Now, announcing these measures while chairing the high-level meeting, the Lieutenant Governor said that in these challenging times, the old age homes, orphanages will be extended all support from the government, including rations. And he further added that the government will ensure the supply of ration to all ration card holders on a priority. He mentioned the topmost priority is to defeat the pandemic with people's participation and urged all to follow COVID-appropriate behavior and get themselves vaccinated. So that's the news from Jammu and Kashmir. News now from Madhya Pradesh. And an announcement by the government of Madhya Pradesh has brought big relief for families of COVID-19 patients. This is as the nation continues to battle against the pandemic. And Madhya Pradesh's Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan announced a pension scheme. This is for the families who have lost their sole breadwinners to the coronavirus. According to this scheme, such families will be given a pension of 5,000 rupees each, and the education for children of these families will be made free of cost.
जिनके परिवार से पिता का साया उठ गया, कोई कमाने वाला नहीं बचा, घर में कोई कमाने वाला नहीं है, ऐसे परिवारों को 5,000 रुपया प्रति माह पेंशन दी जाएगी, ताकि बच्चों को जीवन यापन के लिए परेशान ना होना पड़े। ऐसे सभी बच्चों के शिक्षा का निःशुल्क प्रबंध किया जाएगा।
The Karnataka government has announced that it would temporarily suspend COVID vaccinations for people aged 18 to 44 from May 14th. As per the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, the state government has decided that the vaccine procured directly by the state for vaccination of persons between 18 and 44 years will be utilized for vaccination of beneficiaries due for their second doses. All vaccines available with the state government will be utilized for the vaccination of beneficiaries due for their second dose. Meanwhile, private hospitals can continue with the vaccinations for 18 to 44 years of age category. And now let's take a look at what's making news across the globe. Israel carried out an airstrike on a residential building in central Gaza City this morning after a night of escalating violence as the fiercest hostilities in years dragged on with no end in sight. Hamas launched rocket barrages at southern Israel overnight, and the sound of the rockets being shot down by Israel's Iron Dome system filled the sky, sending thousands of Israelis to shelters. Israel had renewed its airstrikes in the wee hours on the Palestinian coastal enclave, destroying a 6-story residential building in the middle of the Gaza city. At least 67 people have been killed in Gaza since the violence escalated on Monday. Well, nothing can justify a lynching of Jews by Arabs, and nothing can justify a lynching of Arabs by Jews. This is what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, as clashes between both the communities continued. Now, Netanyahu vowed to stop violent clashes between Jewish and Arab Israelis as fury and fear over shelling exchanges with the Palestinian militants in Gaza ignited violence on Israel's streets. Netanyahu, speaking late on Wednesday night, said that he planned to send in military forces to help police maintain order in cities ruptured by violence. Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister had also threatened to hit Gaza militant groups like they've never dreamed possible. And the Palestinians in the West Bank also clashed with Israeli security forces on Wednesday night. As violence between Hamas and Israel showed no sign of abating, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, in a televised speech, asked Israel and the United States to leave Palestine alone. "We will stay like a thorn in your eyes. We will never leave our country," is what he said. Meanwhile, both countries continue to exchange rocket fire on Thursday. A rocket launched from the Gaza Strip hit a residential building in the Israeli city of Petah Tikva as cross-border violence between Israel and Gaza militant groups escalated. Hamas also launched rockets at Tel Aviv and towards Jerusalem early on Thursday, while large explosions also shook Gaza City after Israel pledged to keep pummeling Hamas in what has been the heaviest fighting since 2014, when the war took place in Gaza then. But an Israeli airstrike on a Hamas command post in the Gaza Strip on Wednesday killed 16 Hamas figures, including a senior commander and weapons developers. Israel's Shin Bet security service has said this, and the violence has claimed over 67 lives in Gaza, while 7 people have been killed in Israel. Well, the international community has reacted strongly to the ongoing violence and the warlike situation between both these countries. In fact, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Wednesday said that the meeting on the International Quartet on resolving the escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is urgently required to stop the tensions. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, speaking at the same briefing in Moscow after talks with Lavrov, said that the UN is totally committed to revitalizing the work of the Quartet.
We are totally committed to revitalizing the Quartet. We are totally committed to promote all forms of dialogue by the parties and by other key actors that can be supportive of all démarches necessary for de-escalation, but also for the revitalization of a peace process that has been dormant for too much time.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden also spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, and talking to the media about that, Biden hoped that the violence will end soon. However, he supported Israel, saying that Israel has the right to defend itself.
I had a conversation with Bibi Netanyahu not too long ago. I'll be putting out a statement very shortly on that. My expectation and hope is that this will be closing down sooner than later. But Israel has a right to defend itself when you have thousands of rockets flying into your territory.
And Amrit Pal Singh now joins us with more inputs on this. Well, Amrit, listening to the U.S. President, one feels that, you know, that's a very strong voice of support, that the U.S. has always been, you know, close to Israel, but one is thinking that perhaps, you know, the Democrats have not been as close as the Republicans. And but, you know, we've heard U.S. President Biden there saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. How does that play out, you know, in the current situation?
Mark, it's right. It's true that the Democrats traditionally haven't backed the Israeli positions of the Zionist lobby as, the Republicans have, and there was expected to be a shift in the policy of Biden administration from, say, compared to Donald Trump administration. And there was also, in the beginning days, if you see the voices emanating when the clashes erupted and this whole latest round of escalation started on Monday, the voices emanating out of the United States were leaning heavily towards the Palestinians. But now, as Hamas continues its rocket fire, the narrative is changing. The latest talk between telephonic conversation between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, where he says that he's urged for calm and restraint. He's called for rights of both Jews and Palestinians, but he's also said that Israel reserves the right to defend itself. Now, as Hamas continues its offensive, continues killing civilians in Israel, launching rocket fire over them, the narrative internationally is changing. And secondly, the fact of the matter is, Israel, when it comes down to putting down militant organizations like Hamas, do not really care too much for international opinion. They do what they have to. As Prime Minister Netanyahu has already said, that he said they will be hit so hard they wouldn't have possibly dreamed of. Meanwhile, the Hamas is also giving such statements. It's saying the enemy will have to pay a high price. Right now, the situation seems to be escalating. The world seems to be watching. And right now, it doesn't look that there is any exit strategy both sides have had. In fact, the UN has warned so much so, saying that it could blow up into a full-scale war. Mark.
Okay, so let's look at the sensitivities involved then, because at the core of this are religious sentiments, and basically was sparked because of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the number of people who were gathered there for Ramadan. This kind of a situation could have been handled a little better, one would think, because now, I mean, when sentiments have been bruised at a crucial time like this, and our forces begin to support one another in these kind of interests, when their religious sentiments are involved, the question of the full-scale war really is quite alarming. How does the United Nations with the quartet hope to intervene?
Well, the United Nations would make efforts, the quartet would make efforts. I'm sure, as Secretary Blinken said, that he's sending his top diplomats to resolve the crisis or diffuse the crisis. The international community would come in there. But I think Israel would be very clear that they would want to take whatever military action they need to take. They've already killed, as they claim, 16 top Hamas figures, including their top military commanders and weapon makers, etc. They've shot a building, a 14-story building, which they say was housing Hamas offices and Hamas-backed businesses in central Gaza. So they would want to, because it's, by the end of the day, we have to realize it's asymmetric. Israel is a full state in terms of a security apparatus, while the Hamas is all said and done organization with limited resources. Now, this escalation, though one may link it to the protests and what happened on Monday at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and say that it's a religious conflict, but this conflict has existed for more than 100 years. True. It takes various forms and shapes. Since 2007, the Hamas came in power in Gaza. They've already had 3 confrontations, with a 50-day long one in 2014. After that, there was a considerable period of lull. But Hamas has, I think, chosen the right time to sort of escalate it. One, it's growing. It wanted to take the higher ground over Fatah, over the eviction of some Palestinian families from East Jerusalem. On the other hand, Netanyahu is also being said on a weak political wicket after he failed to form a coalition government after an inconclusive March election. Now, if this could prove to serve as a booster for him, because his rivals have also not been able to form a government. So if they go for re-elections, it is widely expected to boost Netanyahu's image.
Okay.
So there is politics at play, there is religion at play, there is geopolitics at play. I think
Amrit, let's just talk a little bit about the geopolitics, because
because by the end of the day we have to understand that Hamas, in terms of sheer military might, is no match to the Israeli security apparatus, and that will finally decide the closing of this escalation.
Well, that does happen most of the times, but one has to. You did mention geopolitical. Geopolitically, the world has changed. This was a conflict of the 20th century, and it had assumed significant proportions under the previous century. And of course, now, of course, it has come up and gone down. But of course, Israel's strength has also increased, and supported by the United States. But the United States, as the sole superpower, may not have the same power it had, towards the end of the 20th century. So in that context, with the rise of China, let's say, and also alignments that China is putting up, do you see this, this conflict being looked at by the other major powers which would in a way affect the way the escalation is taking place?
Mark, you're right. The realignments that are happening in the power structures of the world obviously will have an effect on it. The Russians have already voiced that. The Chinese have been quiet on this, though. The Americans have called in for calm. Also, there is another factor, the rise of Israel. Yes. Remember, no matter how much the world criticizes Israel and say it may not have a morally right position, and the security forces were harassing the Palestinians and so forth, and so forth. But the fact of the matter remains that they are world leaders when it comes to technology. They are world leaders when it comes to innovation. They have most of the patents of the world lie with them when it comes to irrigation, to agriculture. So the world wants to do trade with them. The world wants to do trade with them. Okay. They lead. They are the leading, power of the world when it comes to innovation in robotics and science technology, avionics. Whether it's happening in the United States, it has some sort of a Jewish connection. Yes. So that is also a reality that the world, and finally, when countries act, they act in self-interest. So we've seen, with the trade often is the decisive factor when it comes to countries taking positions rather than taking moralistic positions.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much. So in the end, you did say that
world alignments,
geoeconomics will play a significant role as well.
Strength, and Israel would want to take the military action that it wishes to take to weaken Hamas, and see that it is not, it is considerably weakened for a considerable period of time, so that it does not escalate any further. And finally, they'll, after having taken military action, they'll tell the world, well, okay, if calm has to be restored,
yes, Amrit,
we will restore calm, but they will do that on their own terms. Mark.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amrit Pal Singh, for joining us with those inputs. Moving on then to our next story. The United States released the 2020 International Religious Freedom Report, which offers a comprehensive review of the state of religious freedom in nearly 200 countries and territories around the world. The U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken came down heavily on China for criminalizing religious expression and committing crimes against humanity and genocide against Muslim Uyghurs and members of other religious and ethnic minority groups. The report further noted that for many people around the world, this right is still out of reach. Precisely 56 countries have high or severe restrictions on religious freedom. Let's run through some global updates now on the COVID situation. So far, over 16 crore, 11 lakh people have been infected by COVID across the world, and the number of recoveries has reached 13 crore 89 lakh 60,000 globally. The virus has claimed more than 33 lakh 46,000 lives. over 3 million lives, 3.3 million lives using international language. Well, the US, where the COVID-19 figures are the worst, they are about 3 crore 35 lakh 85,000. They continue to be the worst hit by the disease, despite having a very strong vaccination drive, but those numbers will come down. The US has crossed 5,97,000 in terms of deaths. Mexico on Wednesday started to vaccinate pregnant women against COVID-19 after authorities included them in their immunization plans as a new vulnerable group. And the process started in Mexico City for women of all ages, starting from a pregnancy of 9 weeks. For some pregnant women, their inclusion in the vaccination program was a pleasant surprise, as they were expecting to have to wait until their age group would be invited to receive the jab. Currently, the jab has only been made available for pregnant women living in Mexico City, borough in Cuauhtemoc, and that is in the center of the city. And in the coming weeks, the program will be extended to other city boroughs and also to other areas of the country. The repeated arrival of vaccines in the country from various companies has also made it possible to begin vaccinating other sectors as well. And until now, the country has prioritized elderly and then first adults over 60 years of age, and then with the 50 to 59 age group bracket. So that's how Mexico is going about their vaccinations. Now, Australia has secured 25 million doses of Moderna COVID-19 vaccine as the government seeks to boost supplies to support its delayed vaccination drive. The government has said that 10 million doses of the mRNA vaccine are due to arrive by the end of the year and 15 million shots in 2022. The country has so far administered 2.8 million shots of a COVID vaccine, and that is well short of the 50 million jabs needed to fully vaccinate its population. The country's immunization program was recently opened to all Australians aged over 50 years. And let's take a look now at sports stories. You're watching Midday Prime. So in the latest ICC men's test team rankings, the ICC World Test Championship finalists, India and New Zealand, they remain on top. The top two teams in the ICC men's test team rankings after the annual update, which was carried out on Thursday. India gained 1 rating point with an aggregate now of 121, and New Zealand are only 1 point behind India after gaining 2 rating points on Thursday in that update, which eliminates results from 2017 and 18. And this latest update, in fact, sees England overtake Australia to take out the 3rd position, and Pakistan is in number 5. Well, due to the surge in COVID cases globally, Badminton World Federation and tournament organizers Singapore Badminton Association, they have announced the cancellation of the qualifying event for the Tokyo Olympics, and this was the last qualifying event at the deadline, as the deadline was set for June 15 for the qualifications. But with this, the Tokyo Olympics door has slammed shut for Indian shuttlers Saina Nehwal and Kidambi Srikanth, with their chances hanging by a thread after the Malaysia Open was postponed. On May 7, the Indian duo had pinned all their hopes on the Singapore Open that was scheduled to be held on from June 1 to 6. In a joint statement, the tournament organizers, Singapore Badminton Association and the Badminton World Federation, have agreed to cancel the Singapore Open 2021 scheduled for June 1 to 6. 2021, the BWF also said that the tournament will not be rescheduled, but offered a glimmer of hope for the Indians. The BWF will issue a further statement on the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games qualifying at a later date, so they might just make it. Some other sports news: Atletico Madrid moved a step closer to becoming Spanish champions for the first time since 2014, and this is after a victory over Real Sociedad. Atletico beat Real Sociedad 2-1. Yannick Carrasco and Angel Correa scored for Atletico in the 16th and 28th minutes of the game. The only game for Sociedad was scored by Zubeldia in the 83rd minute. If Atletico win the remaining 2 matches as well, they will become the Spanish champions for the 11th time. On Sunday, Atletico will take on 11th ranked Osasuna, when a week later they face Real Valladolid. This is in the relegation zone. News now from the world of art and culture, and stories with a difference. An imperial jewelry sale, including a set of sapphire and diamond items that belonged to Napoleon's adoptive daughter, fetched nearly $3 million at an auction in Christie's. This was in Geneva. It happened Wednesday. There were 9 items from the collection of Napoleon's daughter, Stephanie de Beauharnais, and it's well known as the Sapphire Crown, and was previously belonged to Queen Maria II of Portugal. Let's take a look at this, and then we conclude. In fact, with this, we conclude Midday Prime for today. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.